You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. The Chris Voss Show. Yeah, just the show, Chris Voss Show. I'm not going to sing it. I'm not going to do it this time. I've done it 1,000 million times before, but today, I don't know. I just don't. I think we should do something different. We do a different intro to the show every time. If you haven't paid attention, most people have to tune in just to see what our intro is going to be and not singing it. Not going to do it. Should I do it, William?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
There we go. There's okay. We've got vote one in. I will second that vote. The ChrisVossShow.com. I don't know why people like that. It's the weirdest thing we invented like 20 years ago, and we stopped doing it. Everyone wrote us and said, you have to keep doing it. And I'm like, seriously? It was a bit for a week, folks, but there it is. We've been doing it for 13 years. Anyway, guys, we have an amazing author on the show. He's got a brilliant novel that he put out this year, and it's going to be a really interesting thing. Imagine the future. No, that's not my Twilight Zone voice. But imagine a future where there's a Second World War and baseball.
Civil War.
What did I say? Second World War?
Yeah, Second Civil
War. I went to public school, so I stand corrected there. You can tell that the author is upset with me in the back now.
Not at all.
The Second Civil War in America. And baseball has died. And he writes this beautiful book about hope, destiny, the resurrection of baseball. And in fact, the book is entitled The Death and Resurrection of Baseball, Echoes from a Distant Past, April 26, 2022. William R. Douglas came out with the book. You can find it wherever bookstores are sold. We're going to be talking to him today as we've been, of course, having him butt into the show to correct us as well. But in the meantime, go to youtube.com/this Chris Voss. Subscribe to the show. The family that loves you but doesn't judge you. Tell all your friends and family. Sit down with them over Thanksgiving dinner coming up soon and say, I want everyone to sign up for the Chris Voss Show or else no one's getting turkey. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss. Our big LinkedIn groups and LinkedIn stuff and all that stuff we do over on LinkedIn. We love that LinkedIn thing. Anyway, today, our amazing author that we have on deck is William R. Douglas. He is a first-time novelist. After obtaining a journalism degree in 1980, his career took a turn down the road of information technology. In the IT field, he was able to enjoy writing, no matter if it was technical documentation, newsletters, or other material. He lives in the small town of McHenry, Illinois, with his wife, Lori, and cat, Peaches. And we'll probably find out more about Peaches later. They enjoy spending time with 6 kids and 8 grandkids and are very active in their local church. Welcome to the show. William, how are you?
I am outstanding, and I'm really happy to be on your show. Thank you for the opportunity, Chris.
There you go. And we're happy to have you as well.
Yeah.
And give us your .coms, wherever you want people to find out more about you on the interwebages.
Sure. My author website is author WilliamRDouglas.com.
There you go. There you go.
Pretty simple.
And this is your first book?
Believe it or not, yeah, it's my first novel. Can you believe it?
There you go. Hopefully it won't be your last and you'll write some more.
I don't intend it to be my last, so.
There you go. So you've written the new book, The Death and Resurrection of Baseball, Echoes from a Distant Past. Did NFL kill football or baseball? What happens in this book? Do the Raiders finally win something after 100 years? It's set in 2166, so I imagine my Raiders have at least won another football game.
Yeah, anyway, and hopefully the Bears too. But,
there you go. Yeah. Them and the Browns and everybody else who's left out of the party. So all jokes aside, let's get to your book. What motivated you on to write this book?
You know, back in like 2014, 2015, I had a thought to write a novel. It was a bucket list item. Hey, write a novel.
There you go.
I've been told since, high school days that I had a gift for writing, really enjoy writing. And so the storyline for this idea actually started to germinate right around 2014, 2015. And the first, there are several ingredients that went into the storyline. The first one was an article I read several years ago about games that kids used to play before the Civil War of the 1860s. And now these games are extinct and there's no knowledge of them. They're just lost to history. And then I read David Aikman's book back in the 90s, When the Almond Tree Blossoms. That was a very sobering book about a second Civil War in America. That basically it's along ideological lines, conservative versus liberal.
That next year?
That had an impact on me.
Is that happening next year? That seems like it might happen next year. I don't know.
Oh, God, I hope not. So then I read William Fortune's novel, 1 Second After, which is about an EMP attack on America that puts us, he coined the phrase horse and buggy mode. And I get into that in my novel. But anyway,
I'm going to have a little hard time doing a podcast from
a very hard time.
Yeah, we'll just have to go door to door with the podcast.
Door to door, sign language and everything.
Yeah.
So. But then, just loved the game of baseball since growing up in the 60s. I coached my son all through his little league experience and in the late 90s and into the early and mid 2000s up to about like 2004 or so. And one thing I noticed is that at the youth level, there's signs of trouble as far as the popularity of baseball. Now, I'm not saying that baseball is going to die tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, but I just see some signs of trouble. And there's several things. Number one, growing up in the 60s, we learned to play ball playing what we call sandlot ball.
Yeah,
we found a vacant lot. Our buddies got together. We played ball without any adult supervision at all.
Yeah.
And we played it. If it wasn't every day, it was darn near every day. And it was that constant repetition over and over of throwing, catching, hitting, where you honed your skills. And of course, we got involved in Little League as well. And when I first got involved coaching Little League with my son, our local Little League had something like, 60 teams in it or something. It was some crazy number. And now they're lucky if they can get 12.
Jeez.
And you hear that from other venues as well, that the in-town Little Leagues are starting to struggle to get kids to sign up. Travel ball has gotten very popular. A lot of parents want to put their kids in travel ball because they do that kind of repetitive practicing every day and honing their skills. But the problem with travel ball is that you have to try out for it. And guess what happens? A lot of times you don't make the cut. I mean, they're only going to pick 12 or 15 kids for a travel ball team, and then that's it. So and then you have all these other factors that are competing with baseball. You have soccer that continues to grow in popularity.
Video games
and in recent times, lacrosse is getting very popular with the kids.
Yeah, so is pickleball too.
Let's face it. Of course, the kids love their screen time. They love to play games on their phone, their iPad, whatever. And a lot of kids would rather play baseball on a screen than to play it in person.
Yeah. That's very true. I think video games have been the biggest detriment to baseball and other games. That and athletics being taken out of so many schools now.
Yeah.
I miss the old days of the PE teacher yelling at you like the sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. I miss those days with his 70s shorts and stuff. And
yeah. So you have a smaller number of kids getting involved in baseball. Well, guess what happens? They grow up. And now they're adults, and they're not fans of the game. So that's one red flag I see. And then on the adult level, you have adults that have been turned off by the game because of various reasons. They're mad about the amount of money they make. They don't want to spend $100 for two people to go to a game. It's hard to watch the games now. I mean, when I grew up, WGN, which is a super station here in Chicago, you could tune in and watch just about any Cubs game you wanted over the air for free. And I'm a White Sox fan. We had the same thing on a less powerful channel, but you could tune in and watch the Sox game. And now all it seems like all all the clubs have their own sports TV package to watch the home games in your hometown. And some people just don't want to pay. It's a matter of principle. They don't want to pay for it. So you take all these ingredients together, and I think down the road, you could say, well, what if you follow this line 40 years from now, what could happen? And that's what I do in my book. 40 years from now, baseball is on its last breath. There's been a 3-year strike at the professional level. Mm-hmm. The kids would much rather do these other things than play ball. And then the Civil War comes in the year 2061. That's the proverbial nail in the coffin.
There you go. I'm going to put that in. When does it start? I'm going to put that into my Google Calendar site.
April 12th, 2061. I did that. I'm a history buff. The American Civil War in the 1860s started on April 12th, 18.
So are we technically refighting that war though?
No, it's in David Aikman's novel. It's along ideological lines, conservative versus liberal. Now, in my novel, the war is in the past by 100 years. Okay, the main character, Joe Scott, starts out in chapter 1. Okay. He's 100 years removed from the war. The baseball's been dead for 100 years. Mm-hmm. It's extinct. There's not a person alive that remembers the game in the first person. Mm-hmm. There's some vague memories of it with some of the older folks, including the character's grandfather, affectionately named Grandpa Moses. But no one has any recollection of the game at all.
Wow!
And so, and that's part of the fun of the storyline is how Joe gets involved in accidentally finding a relic that's a tie back to before the war and to the game of baseball. Mm-hmm. And a sequence of events unfolds where he becomes the focal point at trying to bring the game back and restoring it to the culture of a rebuilt America.
There's a line that I'm trying to remember the movie it's from, but it's a famous comedian's movie. I think it's the one where they go. He talks about how most people in an early age grew up with their fathers taking the baseball game back in the days when fathers were in homes or more prevalent in homes, I should say. And the relationship he had with his father was going to the baseball game. And well, they couldn't talk about a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of tension between him and his father. I don't remember the movie I'm thinking of, but it was the one. I think it was the movie where the three comedian dudes they go on a trip to be rodeo dudes to run a herd. I don't know if that's ringing a bell at all, but he talks about that, and it really touched on me that a lot of people from his generation, And so is that basically the same sort of experience that this young man has? He finds a relic. And you talk about how this is a story of hope, and how does that play out? Or obviously you can't tell us everything because it's a novel, but give us some teasers as to how that plays out.
So I mean, it's at the very beginning of the story, so I don't mind sharing a little nugget here, but he goes exploring in the woods that for all his life and anybody's life that's alive has been a no man's land because it was a site of famous battle in the Second Civil War. In fact, it's kind of an equal to the Battle of Gettysburg in the First Civil War. Mm-hmm. And this area is a no man's land, and he goes exploring there, and he finds an old rusty sign on a vine-covered fence, and the sign, barely legible, has the words "No Pepper." And of course, if you're a baseball fan, you know that the words "No Pepper" have a significant meaning because pepper was a game of a warm-up, hand-eye coordination type exercise that major leaguers used to employ all the time. It's kind of fallen out of favor now. I don't know if they use it all that much anymore, but it was very popular back in the golden era of baseball. So he finds his sign. He brings it home. His father gets involved, helping to try and resolve, what does the sign mean? Because nobody has any idea what it means. Then eventually his grandfather comes into the picture as well. So as the story unfolds, the hope aspect comes into several things that are in the storyline where kind of a reset has happened in America. Things are really kind of disjointed right now. Mm-hmm. The one thing that's obvious in the novel is that there's been a reset in the area of family dynamics and family dialogue. And one big thing I put in the novel is the restoration of what we all remember as the family meal, where it becomes a routine every night to gather around dinner table and have supper and share in each other's days, triumphs and tragedies, and how important that has been in the past. I think still is for some families, and could be again for many more.
Yeah, yeah, and is there a societal struggle that has come from the Civil War that maybe the rediscovery of baseball helps maybe bring everyone back together?
Yes, I was very careful the Civil War is a strong undercurrent in the story, being that it's in the past. Excuse me, but its destructive power was, well, you have to read it to see it, but it really devastates the country. I was very careful in weaving that part of the story in there in a totally apolitical way. In other words, there's no hint as to which side starts it, which side ends it, which side wins. Of course, I would argue that no side would win a second American Civil War. It would be the ultimate tragedy of our republic. And so I'm very, very careful in the story that there's no hint of that at all. But what does come out in the story is that Americans have relearned the art of agreeing to disagree and of getting along with one another. Something I think which is badly needed right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it used to be that stuff like this brought us together. Baseball, the American Pie. Baseball was America's American Pie, and everybody loved it. It was the American thing to do.
Sure.
And now we're polarized into all sorts of different positions of what we do, and we don't see what connects us. It seems. I don't want to throw out everybody in the same boat, but it seems that I don't understand what connects us as opposed. And baseball used to be one of those things. Baseball.
Sure.
As baseball,
in every way, baseball is a metaphor, I think, for America.
That's an interesting perspective. Let's talk more about that because I think I agree. So I grew up in the era where baseball was still a big thing. I was a Dodgers fan. Tommy Lasorda, I think, should be president someday. Wait, didn't he pass away? But I grew up with, I can't remember the Oakland A's batter that was so amazing, and Steve
Garvey.
Steve Garvey. I was a big Steve Garvey fan growing up as a kid in LA. I grew up a Dodgers fan and of the Dodgers, and it's seeing those sort of things that connected us and that were just ideally American back in those days, and we had an identity with it. Right. Where now we're more, I think our more identity is, it's kind of ironic to say identity politics. Yeah. We don't see each other as Americans so much as we see each other as maybe politically divided. Yeah. But it's probably time for, something like what you talk about to return to some of those core values of something that connects us.
Sure.
That, the sport of men, if you will. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a really interesting, conversation when you think about fathers, when you think about men, when you think about athletics, when you think about baseball. I'm trying to think. I'm still just perplexed at the movie. I've been pulling up the movies thing. I know there's a scene in the great movie Field of Dreams. His father, and I can't quite recall it, but
it's towards the end, I think, when he plays catch with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very powerful scene.
Yeah, and I can't remember the comedian who talked about it. Any other stories or teasers or characters of the book that you think stand out, or maybe snippets that you can tease out that?
So the character Grandpa Moses is the main character, the 12-year-old boy. His name's Joe Scott, and his grandfather is affectionately called Grandpa Moses. That's his maternal grandfather, and he's in his 80s, but he's still got his wits about him and wants to go down with his boots on. And very active, and was a former congressman, and was term limited out. I put term limits in this story, but he's a very, very lovable character and has a huge influence on his grandkids. And there's a couple of times when he sits down with with Joe Scott and his, I guess you call it a grandfatherly talk.
Mm-hmm.
And he's part of what I call in my book, the Crucible Generation. And I coined that term because after the Civil War ends, the country is in such a shambles. It's in horse and buggy mode. And a main goal is just to survive. And he's a child of that post-war generation when they were trying to get going again and rebuild things. And he's a survivor. And that generation is held in very high esteem, much like our times. We still hold the greatest generation in high esteem. Well, in the novel, the Crucible Generation, very highly regarded because of what they went through after the war and just trying to survive, and then experiencing, the different levels of rebuilding in the country that finally brought it back to where it was before the war's outset.
And I would imagine the storyline entails resurrecting baseball and having that something that brings us all together again. Maybe a return to...
Yeah, absolutely. So after the war, sure. After the war, I mean, obviously there's parts of American culture that have disappeared. As I said earlier at the opening of the segment, that when the war begins, it's kind of like the proverbial nail in the coffin for the sport of baseball. And so America's come back. At the beginning of the novel, we're back to where we were before the war started. So we've got self-driving cars, we've got domesticated robots, and some other things. But there's parts of our culture that are missing, and we just don't know because it's been lost to history. And one of the things that happens in the war is that a computer virus comes and wipes out all data on all systems around the world.
Nice.
So that has an incredibly chilling effect. And so it takes a long time to recover all this data because they have to go back and get printed material. They're using books from the Library of Congress, and they're trying to get all this stuff restored. And so when he discovers this relic, they find out its connection to this extinct game called baseball. It really sets off a chain of events that first starts getting his little neighborhood excited, and then the town, and then pretty soon it starts to snowball from there.
Wow. So, it sounds like a great way to resurrect, a country that's fallen off of its mantle and gone awry. Yeah. I grew up in the baseball era, and I know that they've struggled recently with, trying to speed up the game and do different things. They've got the graphic now where you can see the box. Right. That was one thing that did always used to bug me about baseball was, where was that exactly in the box, and did that judge make the right call? You're like, I don't know, he might be getting paid off. Paid off. But,
I remember when I was growing up, the box was the armpits to the knees.
Yeah.
And at one point, it was like some of the guys were calling it, from the waist until like mid chest, and it's like, man, that's a pretty small strike zone.
Sometimes you you see some wild balls, and you're like, it's not a strike, that's a ball. You get and all that, and I do agree they need to speed up some of the pitching and stuff. Sometimes there's a little bit, but that's part of the game is psyching out the pitcher and the thing. Yeah, I think a lot of people grew up with the American Pie of it. I know. What do you think about what's been going on recently with the Aaron Judge thing? Having somebody who's
it's interesting you brought that up because I was talking about that just the other night. Of course, we had what we call the steroid era in baseball.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Judge hits his 62nd home run.
Yeah.
And the son of Roger Maris says, or declares him the quote, the clean home run king.
Wow.
That's pretty powerful.
I think it is, because it's a testament to a man on his own. Like, I go to the gym, I lift weights, I don't juice, I don't want to get involved with steroids. There's a cheat that's there. I mean, are those guys exemplary athletes? Maybe so. Yeah. But there's an edge, and having somebody do it clean, I think just speaks to the quality of the sport, the quality of the athlete.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what true athletism is. Because, I do some of my, I mean, I probably can't say anything. I do some of my best podcasts jacked up on high-end caffeinated coffee. But, you know,
a double latte, eh?
Double latte. It's kind of a quadruple one, actually. But, you know, I mean, to me, that's the respect of the sport, the power of the man in the arena without any aid other than, you know, there it is. So I think it's great. And I think it's probably going to be good for the game of baseball. I still love the game to this day. I went to a Dodgers game several years ago. Like I say, Tommy Lasorda is a god in my mind. I'll always be a Dodgers fan. You know, growing up in LA, I'm a Raiders fan, a Dodgers fan till the very end. Fortunately, the Dodgers win more games than the Raiders do. So there's that. Maybe you should do one on the resurrection of the Raiders in 100 years. They might win a Super Bowl or two.
You know, your Dodgers beat my White Sox in Game 6 of the 1959 World Series. I was about 4 months old at that time. So
was that like when Tom Brady stole the Super Bowl from us with the tuck rule bullshit in 94 or 95?
No comment.
I'm still sore about that. I'll give you Tom Brady is the GOAT, but I still want that Super Bowl back. That one's got to come off the list.
Yeah.
So I might take a picture with Tom Brady if I see him, or I might, you know, tell him I don't like him because of that.
Yeah.
It's a hard call. But the movie that I was thinking of was the movie City Slicker with Billy Crystal.
Yes. That was hilarious. I love that movie.
Great movie. And I believe there's a scene that he talks about it, and I've seen him talk about it in real life.
Was with Billy Crystal?
Billy Crystal, yeah.
The scene with him? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real story about how, you know, him and his father couldn't talk, but the one thing they could always do was they grew up sitting down watching the baseball game.
Right.
And like you mentioned earlier, it is harder on families to go to the baseball game. Evidently, some of the new stadiums they built, you know, people are priced out of them. I mean, the NFL has done the same thing. I mean, you know, you can't do that thing where you and your dad could go to the baseball game and, you know, now fathers are thrown out of the homes en masse, and so many of them single parent homes are like huge. You know, people don't have that relationship where you could, you know, have a dad and son relationship is kind of always tough, you know, because dads are tough and dads try and prep you for the world. So they try and teach you the world's tough because they know what you got to go through. They try and prep you. You know, my dad was always trying to teach me things about, you know, I need to learn, you know, and I'd be like, I don't want to mow the lawn. It's stupid and it's a pain in the ass. And, you know, he was trying to teach me life lessons, you know, which is what fathers do. But
I have a line I use with my grandkids that are in grammar school. I tell them, study hard because the world is a cruel place for dummies.
There you go. That's very true. Yeah. If you want to learn, be dumb because it's going to be cruel. It's cruel if you're smart too. So the less
that's true.
The less smarter or the more dumber. I don't know which is the appropriate way to say it because I clearly flunked school. It can be painful. So definitely make it less. Anything more you want to tease out of the book before we go?
You know, I think the ending part, when people get to the end, they're just like, they're awestruck. So I won't even give a clue. It's just, you got to get to the end. I referenced earlier that Jackie Robinson makes an appearance in the book. So I'll give you a little clue there. And there's a couple of tips of the hat to The Field of Dreams and Sandlot, two of my other favorite baseball movies, in addition to 42. There's also, you got to look for them, but there's lots of baseball names and phrases that are kind of woven into the story that some people have picked up on that. So some pretty famous names.
There you go. We just had, we mentioned, we were talking this on the pre-show. We just said Michael G. Long has written several books on Jackie Robinson as well. So check those shows out. Right. And what an amazing athlete he was. And
absolutely.
You wonder when you look at his story, if it hadn't been for all the crap he had to put up with, the racism, the, you know, people trying to sabotage him at every length. I mean, they would throw things at him from the stands while he's trying to hit a ball.
Yeah.
You know, you think about all the stuff that he put up with from a mental standpoint and physical standpoint, how much greater he really was. He was an incredible athlete at all different sports when he was young.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but, you know, hopefully, you know, we see more of what's going on with what's his face in baseball, the gentleman who just hit the new records there.
Absolutely.
And is the season over? Can he get more, or is it done?
Season's over, so if he gets any more, it wouldn't count as a regular season.
But he matched.
That's postseason now. So
he
I want to add, one another thing I hope people take away is that, because I'm seeing this in the reviews, is that when people get done with the novel, it's invoking very strong memories of childhood. And also it's making them really take a step back and think about where we are at currently as a nation and where we could be headed, because the trajectory we're on is not a good one. If you follow it to its final endpoint, it's a potentially very frightening scenario. So people are thinking about that as well when they get done reading the novel. So
yeah, the reviews are beautiful. What a beautiful novel of relevance, depicting how things might be. And whether you're a fan of baseball, a patriot, or just a heartwarming story, you won't be disappointed reading the book. Lots of great reviews on the thing in the 5-star category. So people really loved it so far. Yeah. So order it up and give me your .coms where people can find you on the interwebs.
I wouldn't be very good if I didn't do this, right? Here we go. Woo.
Yeah, plug the book. It's all about the plugs.
So, yeah, obviously Amazon, Apple Books, Google, even Walmart online, Barnes & Noble online. I would really appreciate your support if you're a fan of baseball, if you care about our country and where it is and could be headed. And would really appreciate your support and reviews and get a real big head of steam going on this thing. So
there you go. Order up the books, folks. Wherever fine books are sold. Remember, stay out of those dark alleyway bookstores. You might need a tetanus shot if you go in them. The Death and Resurrection of Baseball: Echoes from a Distant Past by William R. Douglas. William, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, sir.
It's really been a pleasure, Chris. Really appreciate the opportunity. I've had a lot of fun.
It's been fun. We've been going through Americana.
Absolutely.
The Sandlot. You know that guy with the funny face, red hair, kind of a fat face from Sandlot?
Yep.
He's on TikTok.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and he's making like little videos kind of referencing the Sandlot.
Okay.
Maybe you should link up with him and send him a book or something. But he's over there and he kind of looks a little bit, how those kid stars kind of look like they are when they're older? Kind of the same sort of look. So it's kind of cool. That was such a great movie too.
Yeah.
That was such
in the book the kids play a Sandlot game with no adults. So.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Another tip of the hat.
All right, bud. Thanks for tuning in to my audience. Be sure to go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, goodreads.com/Chris Voss, all the places we are on the interwebs. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.
God bless everybody.